Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are here with the summer quarter for MSP Tech Talk, and we're kind of switching things up today. So I'm on video, our guests are on camera as well. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but first, a few housekeeping items. So this is the summer quarter of MSP Tech Talk, the beginning of 6 lectures of different topics. Please use the questions feature to ask your questions, and I will prepare and recite those to the speaker as we go through. A couple of updates on where can you find SMB Nation. So first of all, you do not find us today in Las Vegas at Microsoft Inspire, which is a combined conference with Microsoft Ready, an internal employee conference. Getting feedback, 40,000 people down at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas right now for what used to be WPC. The reason we're not there is this is the first year they do not allow press, bloggers, media, or analysts. So I'm back on Bainbridge Island, high noon on the West Coast. No, we got visitors out there on the East Coast where it's mid-afternoon. I'm sure we have Larry in Dublin again. So it's early evening for Larry, and then our friends over in Australia and New Zealand, like Clive Start, good morning. It's morning over on the other side of the world. So thanks for joining us. You will be able to find SMB Nation at CompTIA ChannelCon end of month. You're going to see us at Spiceworks in mid-October. You're going to see us at SolarWinds and Power in mid-September. So I'll keep you posted on where we'll be. With that said, we have an amazing show today, and you're going to be really surprised with the depth of the content and how usable it is, and a second look at digital marketing. So the topic is digital marketing, and we have Kevin Hunter, who I'll bring on in just a second with his assistant Kyle. You see him there on the screen. And what better way than to talk about digital marketing than to actually engage in it with a live feed? So you're seeing me in my office for SMB Nation. So Kevin, I met you, what is that, a couple months ago at your studio in Longview, Washington, just north of Portland. And boy, howdy, that was one heck of a meeting. So, but why don't you introduce yourself properly, and then I have a question about one of your segments up on YouTube. So welcome, Kevin. Who is Kevin?
All right. Well, thanks, Harry, first of all, for inviting me on this broadcast. And it's our pleasure, myself and Kyle Torgerson, that are here today to share with you a subject that's actually highly relevant to what I do professionally today. So a little background. I got started in traditional radio, which people recognize as radio, and for a lot of people that I talk to even briefly after they hear me speak, although I'm a little hoarse today, I got to tell you.
Oh boy.
But when people hear me speak, they'll quite frequently ask, "Are you in radio broadcast or something like that?" That led me to traditional radio in 1999, so I have a fairly lengthy background in media as people traditionally know it. And then back around 2009, 2010 area, I started looking at the explosive growth of online media and looking at broadcasting our content there. And it led us to a huge learning experience, some of which that we're going to share here today with people.
Yep.
And how there's significant departures between what I knew as a radio broadcaster, having recorded a ton of advertising for people, working with people not only with radio advertising, but TV advertising, newspaper, print, postcards, direct mail, all of those sorts of things. And we had a huge learning experience going into this market. And so we're going to share some of those things here today on this broadcast.
Well, that's great, and I fondly call you Mr. YouTube after our introductory meeting a couple of months ago, and I know that's where we're gonna have some conversations. But quickly, what's the best YouTube video you ever did? I think you had a niche in the automotive industry. Is that right?
That is correct, and the automotive industry is really what introduced me in part to creating this online element of video marketing. And so I do have a lot of content on the web that are car-based type videos. And after we share some of the foundational information, I'll get into some of those and share specific examples with people here on the broadcast. when I mentioned, when you asked the question that, what do you think is the top, or what do you think is the best? Um, Interestingly enough, and this is some of the things that our viewers are going to see, is there's a lot of common rules when it comes to YouTube production, where people will say, don't make a video that's more than 30 seconds or 45 seconds or 90 seconds. Or some people
Yep.
will say, 2 minutes or 3 minutes are the limits. And to all of which I say that if you get out of this presentation what you can today, many of those rules won't apply to you. And it's
Okay.
a lot of that idea, or that mantra, was taken out of people who tried to take a lot of traditional ideas from marketing and advertising on radio, print, TV, and bring that over to video, online video. And then, because of so many failures, ideas like some of the things I just shared came out. And so I'll share with you in the end here how some of these videos that I have online actually violate a lot of these common rules, so to speak, and yet are highly successful videos. One of which was created on a Windows Movie Maker program back before we had the nice studio that I now have here today for video production. Um,
Yep.
I created one of these videos on Windows Movie Maker. Any high school kid could do what I did, and just used picture stills and put some text overlay in it. I didn't realize that I was stumbling into something that was actually quite magical. And I created a video that was 8 minutes in length, so way too long for the so-called ideal window. And that video is one of the top videos on YouTube with just under 3 million views on it. So um, by understanding some of the principles that we'll share here today, there's many of those common ideas that I would refer to more as myths when it comes to marketing online.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. And again, Kevin, you got a worldwide audience. Larry in Dublin, Ireland is always good for this. Got a couple of people in Australia. So let's rock.
All right. Well, talking about worldwide audiences, creating online video is something that I've been doing for a long time. I have just over 52 unique viewers from around the world, or 52 million unique viewers in 220 countries and territories around the world. So there's a lot of this content that we're sharing with you today has been seen in every country and territory worldwide. And for people who are thinking whether they're, in countries outside the U.S. or U.S. direct, you might ask, if my customers are in, you mentioned that we're in Longview, Washington, which is kind of sandwiched between Seattle and Portland.
Yep.
And for people would say, well, I'm not really interested in an international audience. I just simply want to reach my customers in Vancouver, per se, or in Seattle, per se. And to which I always tell people that remember what those three W's stand for in the beginning of any web connection. That's World Wide Web. And
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
if you
Exactly.
if you can create content that has interest to audiences in a World Wide Web, that's relevant to Google and YouTube because that's their market, and your content in your specific market as it relates to your specific clientele that you're trying to hit will also be much more relevant in that specific market. So if I was putting up a video that I wanted to target specifically a Seattle audience, I would rather have 1,000 worldwide views on my video targeting Seattle audience than simply having 1,000 views in Seattle, because that worldwide audience will be more relevant in the Seattle market than somebody whose video has just been seen locally. So without getting more into that, we'll share some of the background premises behind the topic that we're talking about today. So Kyle, if you would go ahead and load those first slides for us. All right, so we are here today talking about online video marketing. As it says here on the slide, my name is Kevin Hunter, running tech here in studio. With me today is Kyle Torgerson. This is 2/3 of our broadcast team. For people who might be looking for me on the web later, you can find us on Northwest Digital News. So we're broadcasting here from our studio today to share this subject with you. So if you would, Kyle, go to the next slide here. So people commonly ask the question, why video? And why should you consider video as it pertains to marketing? Well, everyone recognizes the power of creating captivating and compelling messages with video, but a lot of money is routinely spent in script writing, editing, recording, etc. And yet, despite all of this professional looking end content, most people who attempt to do this don't have success with it, and it falls far short in their marketing strategies. And the questions really are then why? Because if you've spent thousands of dollars in doing all of this, and a year from now you look at your video and it has 50 views on it or 100 views or whatever, I'm disappointed when when that doesn't happen in the first hour or two that I put a video up versus where many people are, a year or two down the road. So we're going to share with you then the reasons why commonly this fails. Before we do that, I want to get into some of the background and as to why when I'm visiting with anybody, Harry, whether it be yourself or people in our listening audience, viewing audience who are following us here today, we want to talk a little bit about some of the history that and the mindset behind this. So if you would, Kyle, go to the next slide here. These are what I'm going to be sharing today are the 6 principles of success in video marketing, and we'll have those up here on the screen here in just a moment, so be patient. I want to simply mention that if you violate these key areas, make a mistake in key areas of your messaging and your online video marketing simply dies, and fail to tap into some of the key learning styles, and you miss out on the opportunities to have a organic viral product that's out on the web. So there's first component is around messaging and how you're targeting with messaging. Second component is how you're tapping into learning styles, and those encompass the 6 principles that we're going to talk about. So first of all,
Kevin,
let's get into.
Yeah,
Go
Kevin,
ahead.
if you don't mind, Kyle, I don't know if you could shrink that window to make it fully visible. Kevin is blocking out a few words in that second point.
Yeah, he can shrink that down just a little bit.
Yep. If we're going to talk video, let's talk video.
All right, we're fixing
All right. Well, he's doing that. There we go. We're getting there, so people can read it. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, please continue, my friend.
Yeah, no problem. So let's go to the next slide here, Kyle. So the question is why do people fail with this so often? Well, a mindset has been created by hundreds of years of experience with traditional media advertising. And let's share the first one. The first one here that I'm going to talk about is radio, or newsprint rather, because it's one of the oldest. So if you look at newsprint, 1704, newspaper ran its first advertising. Think about that, Harry. How many years back are we talking about? 300 plus years.
Good Lord.
And 1729, Ben Franklin was running newspaper advertising, and in 1955, Reader's Digest published its first advertisement. So, and that's out of the common stream of newspapers. But think of how long people have been putting advertising into print alone. Bring up the next slide here, Kyle, on radio. So 1922, WEAF in New York, now known as WFAN, aired its first paid radio commercial on August 28, 1922. And that was for the Queensboro Corporation advertising a new apartment. 1927, a couple pieces of legislation that came out. This created the beginning of the FRC and eventually in 1934, the FCC. But interestingly enough, there was really no additional guidelines as it came to radio advertising. But looking back to 1922, this is how long, just under 100 years that we've been advertising on radio. A lot of history there for people to draw to. Go to television. Okay, a lot of us have seen these as seen on TV. 1941 was the first TV commercial. And what happened in TV initially, if for those of you that are old enough to remember, is that first of all, they were single sponsors of an entire program. So you didn't see all these interruptions of shows happening with commercials. That didn't happen until the 60s when TV introduced commercial breaks with multiple advertisers and sponsors. And for those of us who, whether you're watching a ball game or it doesn't matter, these are, in my household, are known as the opportunities where you run off the couch, head to the fridge and pick up your snacks and come back. But there's all these interruptions rather in TV. My whole point that I wanted to touch on all of this is think of all this history, all this expertise, and all this know-it-all, know-how that we have learned as it pertains to advertising. And generally, any audience or any individual or any company that I might be talking to with regard to marketing online is always making reference to one of these three subsets, whether it be print, whether it be radio, whether it be TV. We're talking about this pretty regularly.
And Kevin, if you don't mind, Kevin, a lot of listeners on our show today would recall we had a magazine for 6 years before the Great Recession caught up to both us and the print magazine industry, and that was no longer relevant. But we had SMB PC, about 50,000 circ. And then I also had the pleasure of doing a short run radio show called, I think we called it Tech Talk, up on Como AM up in Seattle, underwritten by Microsoft Response Point of Phone System. And the point I want to make, first of all, I totally agree with your legacy history point of view, and I've lived part of that. The other thing, though, a dirty little secret about magazine advertising and radio advertising is the salespeople love that it couldn't be measured, right? And I'm gonna let's go there a little bit later about measurement, but I just wanted to add that. Please continue.
Yeah, it was always nice to have things that couldn't be measured, because then you could make whatever promises or claims about it, and people couldn't be disappointed.
Yeah, just had to add that.
All right, so next frame there, Kyle. So does media history hurt? And the answer to this question is yes, because it's the foundation for everything most people know about advertising and how they're going to then apply that to video marketing and the very common mistakes that they make. So next slide, Kyle. So some of the key objectives of traditional advertising. So it didn't matter if you were going into print or radio or TV, you're trying to establish a brand. So you wanted to create brand identification. A lot of people commonly put in advertising a comparative competition. So, and of course, they're trying to make themselves be the best show in town or the best product in town. It was also necessary to have a hook or the deal. And so when you mentioned early on, Harry, that I have a fair amount of video content online that pertains to the car business, who hasn't heard the deal of the week or the deal of the day, and then the last point in here is to create a sense of urgency. Come in here, buy the car today before the rebates run out. All of that kind of messaging is around traditional advertising. And the point of this was to establish yourself as being the best and get buyers to make a decision as quickly as possible before they actually start thinking, applying logic to their buying decision. So this was traditional advertising. And again, this is what kind of gets in the way with online marketing. Next slide, Kyle.
And Kevin, I'll add to that if you don't mind. A friend of mine recently bought a boat. We've gone to a few boat shows, and the boat salespeople, they don't want you to leave the dock. They do not want you to leave the dock because you're excited about the boat, you're ready to go, and boy, howdy, they know once you walk off that dock on South Lake Union, they've lost you, man, because you start thinking about, well, do I really need a $300,000 boat that's $30,000 a year to maintain and store?
You start doing things that are just intelligent. You start thinking about, what would my rates be if I'm going to finance this? What kind of cash down do I need to put into this? Does the payment fit into my monthly budget? You might be a current owner of a boat right now that you're thinking about trading in, and are they offering you a fair value on the? So you start thinking too much, and the last thing they want you to do is to think, and they don't want you to be informed and educated about your decision. They just want you to make that decision today.
All right, please continue.
All right, so this next slide just really had, dealing with newspapers, with radio, with TV, readers, listeners, viewers in steep decline. And this is pretty much true really in most of the traditional media markets. I remember back in, it wasn't that long ago, but in 2011, 2012, I was in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and giving a presentation on a similar kind of subject, but a little bit off subject. And I was just talking about newspapers in general. And at that time, 2011, 2012, newspaper had been seeing anywhere in the high single digits to as much as double-digit reduction in readership for almost 7 years in a row leading up to 2012. Think about what's happened to it today. And so there's a little different scale as it pertains to traditional radio, a little different scale as it pertains to traditional TV, but I don't think our viewers have to think too far to start to go, well, where am I getting my news and information, et cetera, today? And is it from the newspapers? Is it from radio? Is it from TV? And where years ago that was 100% the case. And when you think about it, is even today, we're on camera today, we're sharing audio, visual presentation. Years ago, if we were to do this in any of these media settings that we're describing here, the old saying of, hey, we're famous, or, we're going to be famous and walk out on the street and everybody's going to recognize our faces. It was because of all these forms of media that were out there. There was limited number of channels, limited exposure, and literally everybody, when they got home from work, were either tuning into one of these forms of media or picking up the newspaper and reading it. And if your mugshot was in there, within days or weeks, pretty much anybody anywhere who wasn't living in a cave knew who you were. And so that's how media worked. That's no longer true today. So let's go to the next slide. The tried is not true. I mentioned this. I love this statement because in many situations that I have given advice to people that have sought me out for marketing assistance in their organization, here's one of the things that happen. They try some form of online marketing, and then when they apply all that mindset of traditional media to what they were doing and start suffering from various failures, they go back to what they call the tried and true. Like, we used to send out mailers, or we used to send out postcards, or I was on the radio 6 days a week and 30 spots a day. I need to go back to the tried and true. And my point to all of that, the tried is no longer true. And more specifically to online media, unlike TV, radio, newspaper, or any form of print media, successful online video has its own set of rules. So the question is what are those rules? And if you don't know them, that's why it's failing. Next slide, Kyle. So you cannot get salesy in your messaging with online video. So think about this with the stuff we have visited about so far with brand identification and getting your hook out there and pushing people to buy the boat before they leave the dock. Think about how all of your messages, Harry, had to be sales oriented. We're the best. We have the best deal. Buy today. It was all around sales, wasn't it?
I'm getting my pen and paper, by the way. I'm taking notes.
very, very good, as should everybody else. You cannot get salesy with your videos. And one of the videos we have coming up here in just a little bit, this was a video that I did with a longtime business friend of mine. And I'm not kidding you, Harry, this took days just to get to the basic message, because he was so bent on wanting to say over and over again that, check out my other deals, or I make the best vinyl graphics around, etc. I really had to beat up on him on this and just say, Carl, you don't get to sell anything. In order for us to actually sell you and your organization, you cannot get salesy with all of this. So this is go ahead.
Yeah, question. That's great. I love it. I can raise my hand and you call on me. I want to draw something from my own experience. I was in a startup in 93, 94 in Seattle, 1-800 Network. Kevin, that's back when phone numbers meant something. And that was the name of the company, was 1-800 Network. And essentially, we were a temp agency for technology professionals, right? So call 1-800 Network to hire a temp. And it was okay, but it was interesting working with our radio advertising campaigns, our flights. And so we were on sports radio. And to your point and about your buddy, they repeated the phone number like 5 times in 30 seconds, right? Call 1-800 Network. And I'm hearing you say you can't go there with the video stuff, right? You need to deliver real content. Okay.
That is correct. You keep pounding that message into your audience and you will lose them as quickly as they start.
All right. Thank you.
That's here in just a moment, because Kyle, go ahead and bring up the next slide here. I want I want you, Harry, and our viewers to think about why you were on the internet today. Why were you on the web? You've been on the internet already today, and the day's young. What were you on the web for today?
Business, to be quite honest, to consummate transactions and make a couple. Wrote up 2 proposals today, so I guess I would say, is that a fair answer? Business purposes and consummation of transactions.
My point with this, though, is that going back to a salesy kind of content, etc. We have others that are here on the show as well, many others, and I want them to consider the same thing. Why were you on the internet today? You might have been, some people were on Facebook, catching up on social media. They might have been watching some video on YouTube. They might have been reading a blog somewhere. They might have been doing all of those things, but they did not go on the internet hoping that somebody was going to pound into call 1-800-INTERNET or call 1-800-NETWORK today and over. So they weren't going there to be sold. They were going there for a number of other reasons, but it wasn't to be sold. And that's why, going back to this initial message, you cannot get salesy with your video content. You violate that premise, and I guarantee your video. I've seen companies spend, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 on a video, and it's all around selling themselves. Super professional production they have in their message with no audience, because nobody goes on the web to be sold. Next slide, Kyle. Okay, so we are going to recapture this in just a moment. These are some of the top reasons why people are visiting the web every single day today. Information. So looking for news, events, weather. They can be all the, a current event, going on in your own community. So people are looking for information on the web. The second component is education. So they might be looking for instructions. Let's say somebody is, they're a how-to person. They're looking to replace the brakes on the front of their car. You can go to become educated on that subject. When people say that you can go to YouTube and learn just about anything, that's true. And education of any kind. So instructions, guidance, how to, they go to the web for that as well. And
Kevin, if you don't mind, a favorite saying of mine, and I'm being a little facetious, but there's truth to humor, is that all of the knowledge in the world exists. Okay, let's just make an assumption. All of the knowledge in the world exists. You just have to go find it. And where I tend to find it is on YouTube, right? When I have to change the oil on my son's Toyota Matrix, which has a weird, placement.
Yep,
like you have to take the engine out to get to the filter. All of the knowledge in the world exists. You just got to go find it.
That is correct. That is correct. And to that point, even simple things, you buy yourself a new car and you just, you aren't necessarily looking to change the oil per se, but included in this, how to change the oil in the car you happen to be driving. You pull up at the gas pump and you just want to check your oil. That same piece of information will be available on that same video, because that's where they start from, was how to get into that piece. So education. And the third very significant area is simply entertainment. To be entertained, be amused, find something to relax with, some enjoyment, whatever. But tons of people go there. And so another one that would fall under this entertainment is gaming as well. So think of how many people are online simply to do gaming and entertaining themselves.
Yep.
So information, education, entertainment. Next slide, Kyle. Okay, so here are key learning styles to think about as well. And if you went to go search different styles that people learn, learning styles, you'd find 8 different styles. I'm going to focus on these 3 because these are things that you can tap into with video. So number 1 being visual, creating a nice visual layout for what you're doing. You can do that either with picture stills, which we're going to show you some of that, and or video. So even people who say that, I'm not I'm not photogenic on camera, or I make a lot of mistakes and I'd have tons of start stops. I'm like, here, are you capable of creating, in number 2, the linguistic, are you capable of creating a auditory, so a voiceover for your messaging? Very simple to get the common tools if you don't know how to do this, to touch into that auditory thing. Also tying into linguistic then is tech support. And number 3 here being kinesthetic, the how-to. So I'm going to capture these again in the next slide. So go ahead, bring that next one up, Kyle. So the 6 principles of successful online video marketing is you get to inform, educate, or entertain. These are your top 3. These come in, I'm thinking about these with every single video piece that I do. A majority of my video messaging is around information and education. If I can crack a joke or find a way to lay it out there where I'm engaging people's emotions and that sort of thing and make it as entertaining as I possibly can, you can take some very dry subjects that are both informational and educational and make them entertaining too. I encourage people to work on doing just that. And the number 4, 5, and 6 are creating a nice visual layout, and we'll show you how you can either do that with active video itself and or animated picture stills. Number 5 being the voice. If you don't have a good speaking voice yourself, or a voice that you think people don't want to listen to, find somebody else to do your voice. And then support that messaging with what you're doing with text. And like I said, we will share specific examples of how I used voice, or text rather, to support what I was sharing with people via the voice overlay, so that I was encompassing a visual, auditory, and text learning style all in one piece of video that was around information, education, or entertainment. Next slide. So we're going to share with you now some examples of some of these. And before I get into the specific videos that we're going to talk about here, I want to share some of the, Harry, you went back to in the beginning asking me, that what are some of the top videos that I've created. And I'm going to share with you some of the more recent ones, some that tie into the example that I shared with you of a business guy that I end up having repeatedly going through and pounding the salesy message out of what he does. But we'll share that video piece with you. And then I'm going to share with you a short segment out of one of these other videos titled 13 Car Buying Mistakes. I'm not going to roll that whole video because it's the one that was created on Windows Movie Maker. It's very so-called amateurish in terms of its production. But when somebody says, I'm not a great video producer, this isn't my wheelhouse, I don't know how to do all of this, my question would be to them, can you create something like 13 Car Buying Mistakes? Because this video, although very amateurish in terms of its actual production, encompasses that information, education, and it ties into those learning styles that I talked about with a visual, auditory, and text presentation in the video. So I'm going to start here first sharing a video that's titled the 10 Best Tips for Saving on Rental Cars. These were subjects that were outside of that so-called automotive industry, but the more that I produced of videos in this lane, the more that I got of viewers who asked me, Kevin, can you produce a video that's on this specific subject? We really like your format that you used in these others. Can you hit this subject? So if you would, Kyle, share this video. It's 6 minutes in length. We'll come back and tie into some of the learning lessons then out of this as it pertains to things that I've already shared. Go ahead and roll the video, Kyle.
Hello, I'm Kevin Hunter. Remember when people rented cars mainly for vacations or business travel? Well, times have changed. The car rental industry is growing by leaps and bounds, with airport rentals historically being the main revenue driver. However, that segment has remained virtually flat over the past decade and a half. The industry's growth is due almost entirely to the explosion of the home city rental market, renting from a neighborhood location. Those renting from neighborhood locations do so for a number of different reasons. However, it doesn't matter if you're an airport renter or a home city renter. I've got a list of tips compiled by Edmunds that are designed to help make your car rental experience as pain-free as possible for your bank account. Number 1, search the internet. This seems like a no-brainer, but as is the case with many purchases, you'll find the best rates on the internet. Shop around. Buying online will afford you the luxury of seeing what rates are on any vehicle your heart desires without the inconvenience of having a salesperson breathing down your neck. Also, many companies offer special discounts to people who rent online. Rates will obviously vary from company to company, depending on vehicle availability, location, and other factors. But rates aren't the only variable to consider. Also look at the hours of operation, because some companies close early on weekends. Depending on your schedule, this might be crucial for you. Number 2, go with a weekend rate. Rates are typically cheaper on weekends. At one company that was surveyed, you could rent a subcompact on a weekday for $64.99. When we opted for a weekend rental, the figure dropped to a far more reasonable $22.99. If you've got some flexibility with your rental arrangements, opt for weekend rental. Your pocketbook will be very grateful. Number 3, weekly does it. Weekend rates are great, but better than weekend rates are weekly rates, and they're usually the best of all. At one company, a subcompact went from a weekday rate of $56.99. That same car could be rented on a weekly basis for $259, a savings of more than 30% if you use the vehicle for all 7 days, and more than 10% if you returned it after 5 days. If you plan on using the vehicle for 5 days or more, just choose the weekly rate. Number 4, think twice about insurance. When renting a car, you'll be offered a collision damage waiver, a CDW, and a loss damage waiver, LDW. The first covers you in the event of a collision, while the second covers any loss to the rental company. Both kinds of coverage are a good idea, but not if they duplicate coverage already included in your own insurance policy. Most insurance policies offer liability coverage to protect you if you injure someone in an accident. Some also cover rental car damage via comprehensive and collision coverage. Check your policy or call your insurance agent to verify coverage before signing up for a vehicle. If you're renting the car with a credit card, your card provider may also pay for vehicle damages associated with an accident. So remember to contact your card company ahead of time to make sure. There's one caveat to be aware of. The collision damage waiver covers loss of use, the charge levied by the rental car company to cover its lost income when the vehicle is out of service. In some states, auto insurance policies don't cover this loss. So if you have an accident, you may wind up having to pay this charge out of your own pocket. As such, getting the collision damage waiver may be a good idea. Number 5, book your car early. This is not a cliche statement. The early bird usually gets it cheaper than everyone else. Rates depend on how many vehicles the company has available at any given time, and the earlier the rental is made, the cheaper it tends to be. Reserve your car at least a week in advance. Number 6, think twice about prepaid gas. Renters generally have 2 choices when it comes to fuel. You can pay for a full tank of gas in advance and bring the vehicle back empty, or something less than full, or you can opt to refuel it yourself before returning. Rental car companies suggest that paying in advance will add convenience and that the low rates offered will save you money. Well, they're right on the first part, but wrong on the second. Prepaying will cause you to pay for more fuel than you've actually consumed. From a financial standpoint, prepaying is a bad idea unless you're certain that you'll use the full tank. Also be aware that some companies charge a premium rate per gallon for the gas they provide. Number 7, be careful of upgrades to larger vehicles. Sometimes rental car companies will offer free upgrades to larger vehicles. They will do this mainly because the compacts tend to be in high demand. This sort of upgrade may seem like a great deal for you. If having a larger vehicle will improve your rental experience, then take the upgrade. But if you have no need for the extra space, it's cheaper to decline. Most, not all, of the larger vehicles will burn more gas, so that free upgrade isn't actually free. You could end up paying for it at the pump. Number 8, steer clear of airport pickups. Picking up a rental car at the airport can be more expensive due to taxes and fees. Try looking at nearby neighborhood locations to save money. A recent Travelocity study showed that renting at an airport costs 11.5% more on average than renting at a neighborhood location. Texas airports were the chief offenders, but airports in states like Arizona, Ohio, Maryland, Missouri, and New Mexico also cost renters more in taxes and fees. Number 9, if you have kids, seat them yourself. If you're traveling with a little one, you can save yourself some coin by bringing your own child safety seat. Some rental car companies charge $10 a day for child safety rental. Obviously, this can tack a significant amount to your car rental expenses. So if you're able to, bring your own child safety seat. If you're renting a minivan, though, know that some rental minivans include integrated child safety seats at no extra cost. And finally, number 10, join the car club. Many of the larger companies offer club membership in which members pay a yearly fee in exchange for certain perks and privileges. These clubs can save you money with benefits like free rental days and airline miles, but you'll likely only see savings if you're a frequent renter. If you fall into this category and use rental vehicles more than occasionally, join the club. Those are the top 10 tips for getting the best rates on a car rental as compiled by Edmunds. If you happen to be a car buyer in the market, check out my other 2 videos. One is titled The Top 10 Tips for Car Buyers, and the other is the top 10 tips for cheaper car insurance. Make sure you give us a like, put a comment on the video, and remember to subscribe to the channel. I'm Kevin Hunter. Thanks for watching.
Okay, you can pause it there, Kyle. All right. So a couple things that I want to capture here is that you'll notice that in the title here is the top 10. This is actually a very popular use. People love to find things like this as it pertains to any kinds of subjects around on the web. So you'll find out that I use this a lot. And here is a reference video, the ones that come up in the end of the video. You notice the one in the upper left as viewed says top 10 auto tips. The next one there is top 10 tips for cheaper car insurance. The one in the upper right corner, we didn't use that format in that title, but then again, there in the bottom right says top 10 tips, beat the car dealer. So you notice we used a lot of top 10 in these tips. It's a very popular title use and will help your product come up in higher levels. Now, there's a point that I want to make to this because people would go, I don't want to create how-to content around my particular business. If you were in the car rental business, you would say, people might say that, and this is one of the most common things that I hear, is that people would say, I don't want to give people all this how-to information around my business because, Harry, you're standing on the end of the dock. The guy wants to sell you a boat today, right? Why would he ever take the time to inform you about how to get pre-qualified on make sure you know from your own bank what your rates might be, or how do you value the trade of your boat, and how do you make sure that you're taking advantage of the best kind of terms, or what's a recommended down payment? He doesn't want to do all of that, does he? And for people who say that will actually slit your own throat and take your own customers away from you, I want to share with you a interesting experience that I had in the car business, because in producing these videos, I first of all wanted to make sure that they were very factual and that they included real information out of the business itself. And so I actually took the time outside of my media broadcast to go and get work in the car business. And I spent part-time hours on actually a number of car lots, got work at a few different dealerships, and employed this use of a informational, educational type marketing approach. And how would this generate leads for me in the business? So for people who are familiar or not familiar with the car business, I want to tell you that on a typical car lot, a average salesperson will sell anywhere from 10 to 12 cars a month. And that's considered on average pretty decent production. Let's just say that it'll prevent you from getting fired. But you're not going to make a ton of money. Go ahead. Harry is muted there, Kyle.
Oh no, that was me. That was yeah. I muted while the video was on.
Okay.
But Kevin, you were just answering the question that 10 to 12 cars a month, they're not getting rich, right? They're making rent, they're buying food, but they're. Please continue. You kind of answered my question quicker than I can ask it.
Yeah, they're not getting rich at that. They're just making a living, and that's it. And so then, when it starts getting exciting for people in the car businesses, you hit 15 a month, and then 20 a month, and 25. And I'm actually friends with a national trainer for car dealerships, which I won't name here, but he travels all around the country training salespeople at dealerships all over the country. And I can tell you from a great deal of experience, anytime you hit 20 plus cars in a given month, that is already well above average performance. So I want to share with you what happened to me in the car business, working limited hours and sharing how-to stuff like this online. Here's what I was able to do. Harry, if I met you out on the end of this dock and you were potentially buying a boat, my question would be, if I approached you out on the dock, was to say, Harry, have you been hassled by any boat salespeople out here today? And your question would be, well, absolutely. You're like the third one, so to speak. This happened on the car lot all the time. And because there's so much emphasis on the creating that sense of urgency and getting somebody to buy before they leave, the common sales approach was to ask you for your name, your email address, your phone number, where you live. I mean, when people think about, like your personal privacy, they were violating that immediately because they didn't want to lose you. They wanted to make sure they knew who you were so they could put you in the system. If they lost you today and you did come back, they wanted to make sure they got credit for your sales. So all of those things were happening right up front because everything was about the sale. And for me, it was about actually gaining your trust and confidence in me as an individual in the business. It was completely different. And so because I was creating content on how to educate you as a buyer, instead, I had the opportunity to say, well, Harry, if you'd like a salesman, I'll go get you one. Otherwise, if you're just here to test drive cars, I can go get you keys and you can drive cars. And your immediate question was to me then, well, what do you do here? If you're not a car salesman, what do you do here? And I was able to say I educate people on how to get through the car buying process without getting ripped off. And where I irritate many people is that if I've met you for the first time today, the last thing I was going to do is allow you to buy a car today. And you're like, hey, we're going to get along really well because I just came here to test drive. I was like, perfect. So having this educational content online, I was then able to tell my prospect, and in this case, let's say it's you, I didn't know your name, where you came from, all that sort of thing, but I would write down in my little notepad, male individual showed up, test drove these 3-4 different types of cars. And before you left, I'd say, I want to share something with you, sir. I mentioned to you early on that I help consumers get through the process of buying a car without getting ripped off. There are several videos on YouTube you can find that are around these subjects. So here's where you can find them. Just put in a given subject around the car business, type in Kevin Hunter, that's who I am. And if you like what you see there, and if you like what you find there, reach out to me. I don't care if it's a week, a month, a year, whatever down the road, but get back in touch with me. I'll be glad to answer your questions. That was completely a informational, educational approach to sales. And I was doing it in real time on a car lot. Here's what happened. I'm working part-time. In my 4th month, I became the #1 salesman in the car dealership, selling 30 plus cars a month, because consumers were coming back to me by droves. And anybody who walked to the front desk, I didn't have your name, your phone number, your email. I couldn't lay claims to you, but you would walk into the desk and say, I ran into this gentleman on your lot last week, last month, last year. His name is Kevin Hunter. Is he here today? Well, I'm working part-time. So quite often the answer to that question was no. And they'd say, well, let me give you Kyle or Bill or Fred or somebody else to deal with. And your response was, no, I'm looking for Kevin Hunter. And it is because you had learned what I did by this content I had online. And so I had great customer retention. I had a huge number of people coming back to the dealership and dealerships eventually that I was at, because I eventually worked with multiples. And I proved that if you create this kind of online environment, a video format that informs and educates, it wins the trust of the potential buyer out there, that I actually didn't have to sell anything, because all of that sold the customer on the fact that I was the person to trust and I was the person to come back to, even if they were buying a car somewhere else. People always came back and asked me questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, let me kind of translate for our audience a couple things. Number one, what you're describing to me is what I call in our industry, and it's certainly not alone, but I call that business development. So business development is relationship building, here today, here tomorrow, versus the transactional sales environment, right, that you were alluding to previously, the traditional car sales approach. That's a little bit more of I'm gonna get mine. I'm gonna ring the bell. I'm gonna ring the bell this afternoon at 3 p.m. So you have that, and I try to encourage the SMB Nation membership to think in terms of business development. It's not a hard sell, because when you're the computer guy or the computer lady in a small community, you see these people at the grocery store, right? It is a relationship. You know your customers and that kind of thing. And then just for the audience as a whole, in terms of the type of content you guys might be thinking about it with video and up on YouTube, the how-to works pretty good in our industry, Kevin, because there's always how do I install the new Microsoft Action Pack licenses? Or that's not I'm trying to make up an example, but technology lends itself to how-to. And then I liken it to, you get the halo effect, right? The customer's like, wow, that's a pretty cool cat. I'm going to search them out and work with them. I trust them. So I wanted to connect a couple dots from some points he had flying by. So please continue.
That's an excellent observation, and you hit the nail right on the head. That is exactly what sales and marketing is about in a online environment. Is that if you have to remember why people are going to the web to begin with, which you talked about that early on, and this gives. So let's say I haven't met the buyer at all. Do you have any idea how many people were shopping for a car anywhere in my market and reached out to me, either messaged me on this video or reached out to me by some other means, but they found me and they just said, "Are you the guy who publishes all these videos on the internet?" And I was around car buying. You bet I am. Great. You were so easy to find, and the information you put out there is so. And so here's a person that I'm meeting for the first time, and think about this: second biggest purchase most people make in their lifetime, and immediately they trusted me. How big is that? Because here's these people who were meeting people either for the first time or third time, and maybe somebody been back to the. How many times have you been, think about car shopping? How many times have you go back to a dealership, and do you ever get to a place where you actually trust the person you're talking to? I mean, completely trust them. Do you ever get there? And I was there on the moment I was meeting people because of the content I was producing on the web. And so really, really key issue there. Now I'm going to share with you another video, and that video that I just shared with you is the only one that will play in its context. These others I'm just going to give you a few pieces of, because this just helps to further illustrate what's going on there. So this next piece here, this is how to install DIY vinyl wall decals. A little backstory on this gentleman. When we first talked about this is a longtime business friend of mine. When we first talked about him doing graphics and signage and all that kind of stuff out of the county that he resides in, he told me, he said, I would never go and install a sign outside my region, too far for me to go, too many other problems, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I'm not talking about installing anything anywhere. I'm talking about dealing with online clients. And his response then to me was, there's tons of competitors online that do what I do cheaper. I mean, thousands, if not tens of thousands. Think of how many places you can order vinyl lettering from today on the web. A lot. Okay. And so his opinion was, I'm small time operator. There's no way that I could compete with anybody else that's out there. This is a pointless venture. And I was like, no, there's a niche all the time. And we're going to attract and tap into people that are interested in being informed and educated on your particular subject. So let's play just a little bit of this DIY vinyl wall decals, Kyle, and we'll come back to some of the learning points here.
All righty.
Meet Carl Kangas, owner of Quality Signs and Design. 30 plus years of installing and producing vinyl graphics, and he's here to help you install a vinyl wall decal like the pros do.
First thing I want to share with you are the tools of the trade. First of all, you will need a Stabilo pencil, you'll need a squeegee or a credit card, some painter's tape, and finally, a tape measure. Go ahead and remove the artwork from the mailing tube, and inside you will find complete detailed instructions on how to install your wall. Let's get started. First of all, you're going to want to lay your decal flat on a table, then take a blow dryer and warm up the graphic. This will remove any wrinkles that might have occurred because of shipping. Then you're going to turn over your graphic and squeegee the back, and now you're ready to install. Every graphic has a baseline and a center line. Before you install your decal, you want to make sure that your wall is clean and dry. Apply 3 pieces of painter tape to the top of your graphic and then put it up on the wall in the approximate location. Stand back and look. If it looks right, measure from the top down to the baseline and left to right to the center line. In this case, I'm off a little bit, so I'll make my appropriate adjustments by making a mark at the center of the wall. Reposition the graphic to the center mark that you just made. Now make a mark on the wall where you want the baseline to be. Now you can reposition your graphic so the baseline lines up with your mark.
Okay, go ahead and pause the video.
And the center line lines up with
All right, we're going to pause the video just right there just to capture a couple of things. This video in its shoot from beginning to end was probably 25 minutes worth of footage. Now you see that it's a 4-minute video. You should go through and all of these things, because when people see the visual layout of what he was doing there, you speed up, you edit down, whatever, but don't make, if it's a 25-minute process that he may have done here, don't go through 25 minutes of video, edit it down, speed it up, whatever you have to, so that when you're using the visual, the auditory, which he's incorporated in there, and doing a good job of supporting that with text overlay, you get the cheat on the speed on absolutely everything that's there. What your viewer will do is they will pause the video and go back to points all the time. This particular video, although it's only 4 minutes in length, has an average view time of over 8 minutes. And you go, how's that possible? Well, in YouTube analytics, every time somebody backs up and watches something again, it gets included in videos in that single view. So these viewers of this particular video are pausing it, backing it up, and rewatching segments of it quite frequently during the play of the video. Now go to the end, if you would, Kyle, and show like the last, yeah, right here at the end. So we're going to play it from here and just show you, this is the extent of how salesy you can be without violating the rules of what we shared early on, that you can't so-called sell what you're doing. So share the rest of this.
Vinyl wall detail that adds to the decor of any room in your home. I'm Carl Kangas from Quality Signs and Design. Thank you for joining me and watching this how-to video for installing vinyl wall decals. If you have any questions or need additional information, you can find us at etsy.com/shop/quality signs. The link is in the description box.
Etsy. All right. Yeah, the online marketplace. Got it.
Go ahead and pause that. Okay, so now you can see here that he essentially says, if you have any questions or comments, this is how you can find me. So the only thing that he gets to do in terms of selling after the end, so he creates this how-to content. The only thing he does that's even remotely close to selling is essentially telling people how to find him, if in fact that's what they're trying to do at the end of the video. Here's a really interesting backstory then. Carl had not done business outside of his own county in the nearly 20 years doing his particular business. He opened up an Etsy shop where people could then find it relatively easy. That was one of the recommendations that I had made with this particular product that he was doing. And it started out very slowly. I think he maybe had a half a dozen orders that shot out of this, like in the first 6 months. That more than tripled in the next 6 months. He went out to 100 and some orders in the next year. And that following year, then there was anywhere from 2 to 3. And I think Carl is probably this is now roughly 3 years or so that this video has been up. It's in its 3rd year. And Etsy and producing these online graphics in his business is now a substantial portion of what he does work-wise. And he even shared with me that he goes, the day is coming soon that I will be hiring additional employees, and the only place I'll be doing business is entirely an online audience. And how nice is it for all of these orders to be prepaid along with shipping and everything else? He has nobody to deal with, nobody to bill for 30 days and wait to get paid. None of that. This video, this how-to video, has completely changed Carl's business. So that's just a little value point of creating how-to content and how it can drive. Now, the other thing that's in this, which you can't see, and maybe Kyle, you can bring this up, if in the video view window below the video, show this for our video audiences. Right below the video on YouTube is what's called a hyperlink, and scroll down so our viewers can see that right there. Okay, so there's the hyperlink to the Etsy shop for anybody who, because what some viewers will do, they'll watch enough of it and they'll go, wow, this guy's clearly the expert. He clearly knows what he's doing. And they click on that link and go to Etsy immediately to see what else he has to offer. So the sales connection then comes from him referencing at the end of the video and then creating a hyperlink in the description box of this particular video. But it's very interesting what has happened out of this whole piece. Now, I'm going to kind of switch gears here just a little bit, because let's say, Harry, that you have somebody in your viewing audience who says, I'm an accountant, or I'm a this, or I'm a that, and the subject matter around my business is relatively boring. And how would I create how-to content around something to inspire others or connect with my business? Let me just take the accountant for just a moment, because if somebody is to ask me, would I create how-to content around, you know, tax law as it pertains to accounting or whatever, I'm going, yeah, you could, but are there other things within your area of expertise that you think might create other interest? And so beyond just simple things that connect directly to things that I was doing business wise, I started thinking about all the different things that I have learned in my lifetime, that I have expertise and can create a meaningful how to informational educational content, and then figure out how I can direct leads off this other content that actually has nothing to do with what I do business wise. I'm going to share with you just a really brief clip here. This is on Army basic combat training. I was a military officer in the Army, and decided I'm going to use this same format, create something around a military experience, and see if I can direct leads off of this kind of content that has nothing to do with what I currently do in my life today. Roll just a little bit of that, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hunter, former military training officer in the Army National Guard. Now, my responsibility was getting young recruits ready to head out to basic or advanced individual training in the recruit sustainment programs. Whatever your motivations were for joining the Army, one of your chief concerns has to be physical fitness and making sure that you're ready to go to basic training. They're going to help you out a lot if you haven't done this. This is just a way for you to get ahead and be one of the PT studs in the Army. Of course, the Army is more than just fitness. You'll learn simple things like how, when you're discovered, to get down on the ground and present the smallest target possible to your enemy, and then roll away and get into a position of covering concealment. But you'll get a lot more on that later. And of course, you get to run everywhere you go in the Army, so you might as well start now. The first exercise we're going to cover is the flutter stick.
Okay, go ahead and pause it there.
Hands under your butt.
All right, so here's just a few takeaways on this particular video. You notice that I essentially just set up a video camera, recorded video of me doing various things. I was not addressing the camera itself in any of this. I muted the audio out of it and then used this as video content in the video, but created a separate voiceover for it along with the sound effect that I had in there, and then again use text overlay on this. This is one of the top videos on YouTube on how to prepare for Army basic training, but it links back to my channels and my other content that I have. In this particular video, I have around a 25 or 30% what's called a referral view. So people watch this video, they go, what else does this guy do? And it leads them back to content that's relevant to my business and what I do professionally today. So if somebody said I'm an accountant and what I do is boring, I might ask, well, what else do you do? And you go, well, I'm excellent at horseshoes, or I'm very good at sailing, out in salt water, or I'm an avid fisherman. I was like, why don't you create a how to, catch a smallmouth bass, or how to all these other. So my point here in sharing this is simply to say that think outside the box. You are so much more than what you are doing professionally today, and you have so many areas of expertise. Don't ever put stuff up on the web that isn't 100% factual, or that the information here isn't dead on the money. Like I said, if you notice, the stuff I put in the car business, I spent time in the car business. This stuff that's here on how to prepare for Army basic training, I was a military training officer that prepared people for this. These weren't complete guesses or shots in the dark. I didn't create a informational, educational opportunity that could potentially be bogus. They were based on actual real information. And so for people who might say, hey, I'd be interested in creating messages along those lines, but I don't necessarily have specific information or expertise in that exact area. Well, one of the videos that I rolled early on here was this one around car rental business. Did my expertise in the car business give me expertise in the car rental business? The answer would be no. But because I worked in the car business and I was aware of all these other very good, solid sources that people could go to, when somebody asked me to produce a video on the car rental business, I went to Edmunds to go see what kind of advice is Edmunds giving around all of these. I then used my background and expertise in the car business to research these various things that they then shared. And you'll notice in the beginning of that video, I stated, these are the top 10 tips as shared by Edmunds. I gave credit to where the information came from, but I totally tapped into an industry expert and shared a piece of video that, again, is now one of the viral organic videos on YouTube on that particular subject. So I think with the remaining time that we have here, Harry, this would be a good opportunity to either take questions or answer, deal with any other comments or whatever might be online. So I'm going to turn this over to you and give you an opportunity to take it from there.
Yeah, and let's see, Kyle, if you could, back on the slide deck, I think we have a slide for SolarWinds. If I could have you pop over to that, I do want to talk about, Kevin, to your point, our single show sponsor, and they're a good one. So, folks, a SolarWinds moment. It's because of SolarWinds support that we're here, and we're going to follow up with some information regarding some Q3 campaigns from SolarWinds. So you'll get that in the thank you note from Jenny and myself. But Kevin, it's really interesting about the way you talked about early TV, because what we've attempted to do with our academic content with the MSP Tech Talk, here we are in the summer quarter, is have that kind of sponsor rather than the interrupt-driven television advertisements you alluded to. Kevin, it's so funny when I'm on Alaska Airlines and I watch HGTV replays. Those shows are only 22 minutes, right? Because they're saving the 8 minutes for the interrupts with the sponsors and so on. The cool thing is I can fit a few more in on a short flight. But wanted to shout out to SolarWinds, have a SolarWinds moment. Folks, be sure to ask your questions on the Q&A feature. I'm keeping an eye over on it to my left. And let's see. Let's bring them on back. Jenny, I think we need to kind of
have a quick video, Harry. We have a quick
What's
video.
that? Okay, thank you, Jenny. SolarWinds video. Thank you, Jenny.
Hello everyone, welcome to our first release video for N-Central, filmed right here in Ottawa in front of our beloved Parliament buildings. You should come visit sometime, but not in the winter, it's really too cold here. I'm Omar Cahill, Product Marketing Manager for N-Central, and with me is Chris Reed, Product Manager for N-Central. And we're here to tell you about how you can see more, know more, and do more with both N-Central 11.2 and 12.0. Let's start with how you can see more. Take it away, Chris.
Thanks, Omar. How many times have you had one of your end users call you and say, I can't access Office 365, or when I go to this website, it seems really slow? NetPath is a great way to understand where that problem may be occurring. Is it, for example, a problem with the local LAN that the customer's in, or is it a problem with a hop or a node somewhere along the way out in the public infrastructure? NetPath lets you understand where the problem may lie, and even better, if it's a public node, tells you who owns it and how to contact them. NetPath lets you map from any source server or workstation that you manage by showing you the path it would take to reach any destination IP address or hostname. The primary use case here is to map your customers' connectivity to popular cloud applications such as Office 365, G Suite, Amazon Web Services, or any networked application that's part of their business. NetPath reveals each hop, node, and link it would take for you to reach the destination, making it easy to troubleshoot hotspots or bottlenecks throughout the whole path. Not only can you see within your own network, but the ISP and cloud provider's infrastructure will be displayed to you within the NetPath window. When a problem does occur, NetPath gives you the contact email address and phone number for wherever the problem is occurring, so that you can more easily reach out to whoever owns that infrastructure and help them troubleshoot the problem. I can keep going, but check it out for yourself in the N-Central UI under the View NetPath menu. Click to add a path by selecting a server or workstation, typing in a destination, and within a few minutes, you'll have a path monitored within N-Central. The data is stored historically for 30 days, so you can even go back in time to troubleshoot any issues. Get started now by upgrading your N-Central server to version 12.0. Once the upgrade is complete, you'll have 5 free paths to use for 30 days. Give it a try today. We left some common URLs in the description below.
Thank you, Jenny. While we're kicking back, and please, folks, if you could complete the survey question, totally appreciate it. Be sure to use the questions feature to ask your questions. I see we have a couple community leaders stepped in today, so I'm gonna connect the dots in terms of our audience and some of the content we're discussing. Quickly, it's a yes, no. Are you interested in getting pricing and more information about SolarWinds MSP RMM? Yes, no. And Jenny, go ahead and close that out so we can return to the primary presentation. Really enjoying this new format, by the way, with the video and different presentation styles. So one of the dots I want to connect is as we come back on live is that Kevin, if you can hear me, but I'll set the table. Is that again with our audience? You got to remember that we come from a community a long time ago. You would have called it maybe computer repair, break fix, and so on. Now, with all due respect, we've elevated up to white collar managed services providers, consultants, business advisors, right? Because business and technology along the way married. So it's not just how do I print, but you can ask bigger questions about print management services, be a simple example. So I do think there's a real chance for some how-to type brand building for our guys. That's a natural act. So the other thing is your use of curated content, the way that you gave accreditation to Edmunds for some of your car content. Guys out there in the audience, ladies too, forgive me, but the folks out there in the audience, there is so much existing content from some of your vendors. Your vendors have great content they would like you to reuse. Give proper accreditation, but Kevin, that makes their job a lot simpler. Not all of us are media personalities. We're not all writers. We're not all speakers. The vendors have libraries of this stuff that they would love you to use. Microsoft, Cisco, and Intel. Does that make sense?
Complete sense. And you know, the more you do as an individual to create a good, solid learning experience for your potential clients, and piggybacking on the expertise of all those people that are around you, it just completely makes sense. Completely makes sense. You know, a really kind of interesting thing that happened out of even a video that I created around car insurance. Now, again, it's something outside my area of specific expertise, but recognizing that it was something that car buyers interface with. Nonetheless, I wanted to create a total learning experience. And so I took the time to properly research that subject as well. I reached out to experts that were in the field and practicing as agents, and not just somebody who, as an example, had a single brand agency, but also those who are brokers for multiple different brands that were out there. So I got perspective from a few different people. I published a video then on how to get the top 10 tips on how to get the best prices on car insurance. And that video hit such a home run that I now have a sponsorship with a international, or not international, but a national brokerage that deals with insurance customers, and every single city, state all around the country contacted me and said, can we work with you on that video? Because we do exactly what you suggest to people to do in terms of shopping for best rates. That's what we do. And could we partner with you on that video? And so that's a really, you'll develop other business relationships that wasn't an intended part of what we did, what I was doing when I put that out there, but it nonetheless happened, and it will happen to you multiple times. You'll find out that your efforts on, when we mention marketing, I mean, there's a reason why I used marketing even in the title of this particular broadcast, is because marketing is about business development. It's about informing and educating. It's about creating that foundation where advertising is really about the deal of the day. And when it comes to online marketing, you can't forget that none of this is about the deal for today. None of it is about cramming your brand down somebody else's throat or whatever. It is all around helping your viewers, helping your potential clients make the best decisions for them. And when you do that well, you become the trusted expert in that given area and in multiple areas, as I shared with you. And those things will generate leads back to your way and back to your business in a way that you never thought possible. And so think around marketing, think around that business development, think around developing those well-trusted connections on the web. And if that's how you do your messaging online, taking into consideration that most people are going to the web to be informed, educated, or entertained, that's one of the 6 principles that we talked about. Try to make video content that is informational, educational, and entertaining, if you can make it that. And then remember that visual, you can do it with pictures, animated picture stills like we showed you. You can do it with on-camera video like we showed you with Carl, or you can do off-camera live video like I showed you with the Army video. You can do it a number of different ways, but create that stimulating visual presentation. Make sure you do a good job of a audio overlay so that people are following you, and then support what you have to say with text on your video. And you'll find that you will begin creating more and more viral organic content. And there's nothing, when it comes to marketing and growing your business, there's nothing more powerful than that. You can spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars online buying a specific spot that goes away the minute you stop spending that dime or that nickel or that buck.
Yeah.
But the content that I'm creating not only has a lifespan that runs many, many, many years, but it only gets better every single year. So,
well, and to that, we'd like to talk about the mantra of it's working for you 7x24, right?
Yes.
Which versus, again, if we go back to the Como AM radio show I did for Microsoft Response Point, you know, boy howdy, I mean, it was good for the ego. We're down in the studio. We had a big microphone in front of us. It photographed very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
To slap up on Instagram. But, you know, dude, it was basically 12 to 12:30 on a Tuesday, and that was it. I mean, if you weren't listening
at that specific time, yep.
Right, that was it, and it was a really good experience. It kind of rounded out my background. Question I have over here would be, let me just peek. Okay, on the what do you call it, thumbnail or polite image, it looks like you're using text, so
Yep.
people see text when they're popping around YouTube. Talk to us about the use of text on your thumbnail.
Yeah, so you want to use a picture that's relevant to the content that's there. Sometimes that will be a frame from within the video itself, and other times it's not. But you don't want to ever use a so-called misleading thumbnail. It shouldn't be like maybe this is a bad example, but I see a lot of video content that ends up with a thumbnail of a scantily clad attractive woman on there, and you know there are viewers like that are looking for that. They click on and it's something else entirely. Like, completely do not recommend doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Use something that's relevant to the content itself. And then there's a reason why I use text. So I actually create a specific thumbnail for this video that I put up, and there's a reason why, is that the descriptions that show up next to videos can quite often be hard to read, or they're, you know, the text is such that your viewer who's very quickly going through, you know, a line of different thumbnails can have some difficulty in finding the exact content they're looking for. So I will use a thumbnail that includes text. That is something very easy and very quick to find, particularly for mobile online shoppers, which when you look at for how many people who are going online with a smartphone versus a tablet or a laptop or a desktop computer, that number is approaching 70% of people that are finding the content with a smartphone. And so I want that thumbnail to be very visible, easily identifiable for the subject, and it has made a very substantial difference in the success of the content I put up. So thanks for asking that question, because beyond those, essential principles that I shared in our presentation, there are a lot of other little tricks that you learn. Something as well that's kind of off subject there a little bit, but if you think about this, when I put a particular video on the web, I will research all the other videos that are on the web and already successful, viral, organic. I will search all of them and find, the top 5 videos in that area. And I don't steal their content, but I'll put in my description box, say, if you have seen, and I'll put those video titles in quotes, and I might list 4 or 5 different videos that are right in my description box. It all gets used in the searchability on the web. So I'll use that. If you've seen this video titled, and then list 5, 6 videos that are all in the top 10, and then I finish that by saying, you're going to love this video. So what ends up happening is that this video comes up higher in rankings for those people that are finding that other video. And it also shows up more commonly in so-called referral videos, simply because I've used those specific words. I also do the same thing in tagging. So there's ways to use tags on your videos. I encourage to use as much relevant kind of tagging as you can. And again, tag other highly successful content.
Oh, I love it. Hey, Kevin, we have just over 5 minutes left. I think it's about 7, 8 minutes left. So I cleared the deck on this round for questions. Do you have more content you would like to share with us, sir?
With the remaining time that we have, it wouldn't be appropriate to go into other video content. I simply want to help people understand that this dragon is much easier to slay than a lot of people know or understand. What they really have to understand is that what they have learned, I hope their takeaways is that what they have learned, the foundation of advertising and marketing their organizations currently, that they have learned over the years, much of this has come out of media that does not work on the web. And subsequently, this is a new animal that you're going to have to learn. But in kind of a nutshell, it really is as basic as asking yourself the questions: why am I on the web? What takes me to the web? And when you have successfully answered those questions, you know how to position content on the web yourself. Don't get salesy. Don't include these hooks, buy now, today. Don't do that kind of stuff. Recognize that you're working on developing, you're doing business development. You're trying to establish relationships in which people will learn to trust you as the expert. And any person who's established the so-called expertise in any given area will tell you that their audiences seek them out. That's exactly what you're trying to create with this content you're putting out on the web. You're trying to create trusting relationships that cause consumers and potential buyers to seek you out, because you are now the expert in that given area. And that's exactly what you're doing with your online video marketing.
Yeah. Let me do 2 things. One is I'm going to go off camera for just a sec. I'm coming right back. But Kevin, I want to show the audience what I'm doing as I'm just now getting into this world of the video. Because again, I am in media. I've written books, articles, blogs are I can go on and on and on. I already have, but I just want people to see how I think it's reasonably simple to get into this. Folks, hold on just one sec. I'm going to grab my tripod, my camera, and my sound machine. Okay, and I want to show you what I'm doing. Exhibit A, tripod. Exhibit B, camera. And Exhibit C, something I'm actually really, really proud of, is a $200 sound system. Kevin, I guess, what do we call these? A sound recorder? It's the real deal. This has done wonders because I still type, right? I'm still a blogger analyst. I'm not just a video guy. I hope to play one on TV. But this is invaluable when I'm interviewing people and I can have a more relaxed, sincere conversation at conferences. And it all comes down to this, the card. I put the card in the computer. I go back up to my hotel room. I got my Bose headphones and I transcribe and I can stop and replay. And Kevin, I would offer the quality of my work because of the accuracy has gone way up. It's better work because I think of new things as I'm revisiting the conversation. But I digress. The point, guys, is that between the video and the sound, get yourself a tripod. You can do this. And then, Kevin, I think I shared with you last week in our sort of rehearsal call that I took one fine afternoon and taught myself Camtasia, right? And it's not that bad. Okay, I was a little freaked out. And you know how I learned Camtasia? I watched the video, the training video. I'm an active learner. So that was
tapped
pretty
into
cool.
Somebody's great content that showed you how to do what you needed to do, and you are a student of exactly the kind of marketing we were talking about here today.
Yeah, and Kyle, I don't know if you can bring up a browser and go to www.smbnation.com because I want to show you my first effort. I'm learning as I go, but right there on the home page, you're going to see a piece I did called "The Ocean Through the Trees" regarding voice over IP and unified communications. We'll let Kyle bring that up. We have about 1 minute left, and I want to give a shout out in particular to Bob Nitrio, who's out in the audience. And Bob, if you want to come on, Jenny can promote you. Bob, I don't know if you're agreeable to just coming on and getting the last word, but in terms of our guys, you ran a user group in Sacramento, and our guys doing how-to content. Yeah, Kyle, if you can just scroll a little bit to get a little bit better shot of me with the sun in my eyes and the black shirt. That's it. So, folks, if you go to the SMB Nation webpage, feel free to watch the video. It's my first one where he's using Camtasia and some of the tips that we have. Here comes Bob Nitrio. Bob, I'm going to give you the last word as we've got about 90 seconds. And the point is you ran the user group up in Sacramento. You know our folks, forgive the gender references, our folks. I think it's a natural fit with how-to. Bob, what say you? See, Bob, I see a green lighting. Jenny, let's make Bob a panelist. Bob, hang in there. I do want to make this happen. Bob is always good for some words. Bob, I think I just elevated you up to panelist. Can you try that again, Bob? And that's the law of going live. But you are green lighting, Bob. All right, the best laid plans of mice and men. Folks, we are at time. So Kevin and Kyle, I want to thank you very much for delivering relevant content, and the audience, needs to get it, that the principles you talked about here, Kevin, and you use some examples from different industries, the automobile industry and signage and so on. This applies to the local computer person who's serving his and her community, and the how-to format. How do I print? How do I do this? How do I do that? My God, that's a gold mine. So thank you very much. And Kevin, to your point, this has been recorded. We're going to get everybody the replay link. It's going to live in infamy. And hopefully we're going to drive some impressive hits.
All right. Thanks, Harry. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much. And Bob Nitrio and the rest of you out there, thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks, Jenny, in the control room. Bye-bye.